My name is Olivia Bennett. I'm 30 years old, and the $970,000 Mountain View home my grandmother left me was supposed to be my sanctuary. Instead, it became the stage for the most painful betrayal of my life. It happened on a random Thursday. I had just finished my last client consultation and was prepping dinner when I remembered the upstairs shower had been leaking. My dad, Gregory, installed it himself last summer, one of the few improvements he contributed after moving in. I dialed his number, knowing they were still abroad in Tuscany on the dream vacation I had mostly funded. He picked up after the third ring. "Yeah?" he said, sounding like I'd interrupted a moment of peace. "Hey, Dad, do you remember where you put the warranty documents for the shower fixture in the guest bath? It's leaking again." There was a pause, then a sigh. "Check the blue folder in the garage cabinet, bottom shelf. Why can't this wait until we get back?" "Because there's water damage happening now," I replied, trying not to sound too irritated. All right, all right. Helen and I are heading to some vineyards soon. We'll talk later." "Thanks. Enjoy your wine tasting." The line clicked, but didn't disconnect. I was about to hang up when I heard it. His voice, muffled but unmistakably his. "Who is that?" my mother asked, Olivia, complaining about the house again. My thumb hovered over the end call button. I should have hung up. I know I should have, but I didn't. "She's such a damn burden," he muttered. My heart dropped. My mother snorted. Honestly, she wouldn't have anything if it weren't for us. That house was meant to be ours from the start. June was just being dramatic in her will. "Once we're back," he continued, "we'll talk retirement plans. She needs to realize that house is our safety net. It's not like she deserves it anyway." They were walking, the sounds of footsteps and clinking glasses in the background. Their voices faded, but my breath was sharp and shallow. A burden. I pressed record on my second phone with shaking hands, the call still connected. "Just remind her how much we sacrificed," my dad said. "She's still desperate for our approval. Always has been. Guilt will work." My mom added, "And if it doesn't, we talk about assisted living. Make her think we need care. She's soft. She won't fight us." They laughed, that synchronized, cruel laugh I'd heard 1,000 times growing up. But never like this. I was frozen. My entire body felt cold. They weren't just ungrateful. They were planning to take everything from me. And suddenly I knew. This wasn't my home anymore. Not while they still had the key. I sat there for hours after the call ended, the sound of their laughter echoing through my mind like a ghost I couldn't shake. To them, I was just a pawn. A means to a retirement plan. A walking, breathing house deed. But it wasn't always this way. At least I didn't think it was. Growing up in a modest two-bedroom house in rural Georgia, money was always a struggle. My father, Gregory, worked long hours as a construction foreman and never missed an opportunity to remind me that he could have been something more if he hadn't had to raise a family. My mother, Helen, once a nurse, gave up her job citing stress, though she often used her free time to monitor my every move rather than manage the household. Every expense, school clothes, soccer cleats, even my glasses, came with a sigh, a lecture, or a guilt trip. "You think money grows on trees, Olivia?" became the refrain of my childhood. But there was one person who made me feel like I wasn't a mistake. Grandma June, my mother's mother. She ran a quaint antique shop in Asheville and lived in a gorgeous cottage nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I spent countless weekends there helping her dust porcelain figurines or polish vintage oak cabinets. Her house smelled like lavender and lemon, and her hugs made me feel like the world wasn't as cold as my parents made it out to be. "Don't let anyone tell you what you're worth, sweetheart," she used to say, running her fingers through my hair. "You decide that. You own that." When I turned 17, she was the one who sat with me as I filled out college applications. My parents? They thought it was a waste of time. "You'll end up broke with an art degree," my dad muttered the day I got accepted into the University of North Carolina. "You should just get a job and help around here." They didn't contribute a single cent. I worked through school. Scholarships, part-time jobs, grants, anything to keep going. I graduated with a degree in environmental architecture and landed a job at a green design firm in Asheville. Grandma June was at my graduation, beaming. My parents? They showed up late and left early, complaining about traffic the whole time. Then, when I was 27, Grandma June passed away suddenly after a stroke. I was devastated, but nothing prepared me for what came next. At the reading of her will, the lawyer cleared his throat and said, "To my granddaughter, Olivia Bennett, I leave my home at 45 Laurel Ridge Drive, along with its contents and land, in full. She has shown the discipline and integrity to honor its value." My parents stared at me, eyes narrowing. Their names weren't even on the deed. And from that day forward, they began rewriting history. They stopped calling it Grandma's house. They started calling it our family home. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Little comments here and there. "We should really knock down that wall. It would open up the kitchen so much," my father said one morning, sipping coffee like he owned the place. Helen started changing out decor. "This antique clock doesn't really fit the vibe. Maybe we should hang the landscape painting I brought from the old house?" Without asking, she took down the hand-stitched art Grandma June had framed herself. They weren't guests, they were settlers. At the time, I didn't push back. They had just lost a family member too, I told myself. Maybe this was their way of grieving. But weeks turned into months, and then months into years. 3 years to be exact. They never paid rent, never contributed to repairs or utilities, not once. I paid for everything. Property tax, insurance, a new roof after a summer storm ripped shingles off like paper. But they acted like they were doing me a favor by simply being there. My bedroom, which had been Grandma's, was the only space I truly felt was mine. The rest of the house slowly morphed under their influence. My artwork was replaced with their framed photos. My minimalist touches replaced by doilies and knickknacks. Worse, they constantly belittled my career. I had risen through the ranks and was now lead architect on several eco-resort projects. But to them, I was still Olivia, the girl who plays with dirt and plants. "You work too much," my mother would mutter. "You don't even enjoy this house. Maybe that's why we feel more at home here than you do." Then one Sunday evening over dinner, my father dropped a bomb. "Helen and I are planning a 2-month trip to Europe," he said casually, scooping mashed potatoes onto his plate. "France, Italy, maybe a cruise down the Danube." I blinked. "That sounds amazing. How are you paying for it?" He shrugged. "We've been looking into tapping into the equity of the house. It's appreciating fast, and this place is an asset, after all." I lowered my fork. "You mean my house?" He waved dismissively. "It's the family home. You wouldn't even have it if it weren't for June. And she was our family, too." Helen nodded, smiling as if this was all perfectly reasonable. "She'd want us to enjoy our lives. Don't be selfish, Olivia." I refused. I told them I wouldn't co-sign anything. But in a moment of weakness, still desperate to keep the peace, I offered to help with some expenses. That some turned into most. Plane tickets, hotels, travel insurance, spending money. They acted like I owed it to them. Then, the day before they left for Europe, I overheard Helen on the phone with her sister. "Of course Olivia's paying," she laughed. It's the least she can do. We let her keep the house after all." Let me keep it? My house. The one my grandmother left to me? By name. The final piece of the illusion shattered, and I realized they weren't just taking advantage. They were preparing to take control. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying that call. The contempt in their voices, the way they laughed at my gullibility. They were using me. And worse, they believed I'd keep letting them. But something shifted in me that night. I stopped crying, stopped rationalizing. The Olivia who craved their approval was gone. She'd been replaced by someone colder, sharper, someone ready to act. The next morning, I called Marina Yates, a family attorney I'd worked with during an estate planning seminar. I kept my voice steady as I explained the situation. "The house is solely in your name, correct?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "It was transferred directly to me in the will. No joint ownership." I've covered all expenses every year. Then you're in the clear, Marina replied. There's no implied tenancy or co-ownership. You're not obligated to house them. But if you want them out, especially after this long, I recommend documenting everything and proceeding carefully. That's all I needed. Legally, they had no claim. Emotionally, well, that was another story, but I'd deal with that later. Next, I called Ian Mercer, one of the top real estate agents at my firm, known for off-market private sales. I need to sell the house, Ian. I told him over coffee the next day. Quietly. No listings, no signs, and I want it done within 6 weeks. He blinked. Are you in danger? Just done being manipulated. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. Okay, we'll move fast. I know a couple of serious buyers relocating from out of state. That night, I opened a blank spreadsheet. I titled it Operation Reclaim. I listed every category. My belongings, my grandmother's heirlooms, my parents' items. Items of uncertain ownership. If I couldn't prove it was mine, it went into their pile. I rented a furnished apartment in Wilmington, 2 hours away, under a different name on the lease. I opened new bank accounts at a credit union they'd never heard of. Changed my email, bought a prepaid phone. Each step felt like armor. I found a reputable moving company and reserved a climate-controlled storage unit in my parents' names. 6 months prepaid. No excuses. Then came the hardest part. Packing. I walked room by room, boxing memories, separating myself from a space I had loved once. In the kitchen, I found a faded envelope tucked inside one of Grandma June's recipe books. It had my name on it. Hands trembling, I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. My darling Olivia, if you're reading this, I'm likely gone. But I want you to remember, this house is yours. I'm leaving it to you because you earned it, and I trust you'll know when it's time to protect it. Love always, Grandma. I pressed the note to my chest and closed my eyes. It was time. 2 weeks later, it was done. The buyer, a corporate attorney relocating from Seattle, offered $945,000. Slightly under market, but given the speed and privacy I'd demanded, it was more than fair. Ian handled everything like a pro. No online listings, no open houses. Just quiet showings with vetted clients. The closing was set for a Friday morning. That Thursday night, I stood in what used to be my grandmother's bedroom, now stripped of her quilts, her cedar chest, her scent, and said goodbye. I left a single thing behind, a note, taped to the kitchen island where it would be impossible to miss. It read, in simple block letters, "Surprise, a burden did this." Then I locked the door behind me and dropped the key through the mail slot. The next morning, I showed up to the title company's office in a dark green blazer and black slacks. Clean, professional, and unreadable. I signed the final documents, took the certified check, and walked out feeling both weightless and full of lead. That afternoon, the moving company arrived at precisely 2 p.m. I supervised as they loaded my labeled boxes and furniture into the truck headed for Wilmington. Then I directed them to my parents' belongings. Everything carefully packed, inventoried, and documented. That truck was bound for a storage facility I had rented in their names. I prepaid 6 months and arranged for the gate code and unit number to be mailed to their hotel in Venice. It would arrive the day before their return flight. As the movers worked, I wandered room to room for one final check. In the living room, I found my dad's recliner, oversized, worn, planted like a throne in the center of the house. I stared at it for a long time before walking away. In their closet, hidden behind a stack of linens, I discovered a small tin box. Inside were letters, dozens of them, from Grandma June. Most addressed to Gregory and Helen. Some were typed, others handwritten. Curiosity burned. I read one. This will be the last time I cover a bounced mortgage payment. Your choices have consequences. I worry about what Olivia is learning from you. Another, dated just a few years before her death. Stop assuming this house will be yours. You've never respected it, only resented me for having it. I'm giving it to Olivia because she understands legacy. You understand entitlement. I closed the box gently, added it to their storage pile, and stepped outside. The sun was setting. The house, now empty and echoing, no longer felt like mine. But more importantly, it didn't feel like theirs either. I got in my car, turned onto the winding mountain road, and didn't look back. I didn't have to. By the time they returned, their keys would no longer fit. And the burden? She'd already left. They returned on a Sunday. I knew the moment they arrived because my old phone, kept active just for this reason, lit up with back-to-back missed calls, voicemails, and unhinged text messages. Olivia, what the hell is going on? The locks don't work. Where is our stuff? Call us now or you'll regret this. Sweetheart, please, we're just confused. We thought this was a misunderstanding. And then, we found your note. That was cruel. We're seeing a lawyer. I didn't respond. Let them scream into the void. By Tuesday, they'd shown up at my old office in Asheville, demanding answers and creating such a scene that my colleague Mason had to call security. He sent me a screenshot of them standing in the lobby, arms crossed, faces red with fury. I scheduled a meeting, on my terms. The following morning, I walked into a small, glass-walled coffee shop in downtown Asheville, wearing a slate gray suit and quiet confidence. They were already seated at a back table, fuming. My father's jaw was clenched. My mother's eyeliner was smudged. Whether from tears or rage, I didn't care. I sat down, placed my phone face up on the table, and pressed record. My mother scowled. Is that really necessary? Yes, I said calmly. This is a conversation I need documented. Gregory leaned in. You've made a terrible mistake, Olivia. That was our home. No, I corrected. It was my home, given to me by name by Grandma June, and I sold it. Legally. You weren't even tenants. You were squatters with emotional manipulation tactics. That's disgusting, Helen hissed. We're your parents. And I'm your daughter, I replied coldly. The one you laughed about in Italy while calling her a burden. Do you want me to play the recording? They froze. My father's nostrils flared. You recorded us? No, you called me and forgot to hang up. I hit record after you pocketed the phone and started plotting how to take my house. My mother tried to soften her tone. You misunderstood. I heard everything, I snapped. From the burden comment to the part about making me feel guilty enough to sign over the deed. You had no right, my father began. I had every right, I interrupted. It was mine. And I don't owe you anything. Not money, not housing, and definitely not silence. You think you're so smart, he sneered. But you just made enemies of your own blood. No, I said, standing slowly. I made boundaries. And if you cross them again, if you show up at my job, my home, or try to threaten me, I'll get a restraining order. I leaned in just close enough for them to hear me clearly. I am not your investment. I'm not your retirement plan. And I am done being your burden. Then I walked out, head held high, heart pounding, but free. 1 year later, I stood at the edge of the cemetery lawn, a bouquet of blue hydrangeas in hand, the kind Grandma June used to grow along her garden path. The breeze was soft, the sun low and golden as it filtered through the trees. I knelt beside her headstone and gently placed the flowers at its base. Hi, Grandma, I whispered. I think I finally understand. So much had changed in a year. The sale of the house, the confrontation, the silence that followed. I hadn't heard from my parents in months. After the coffee shop meeting, they made a few pathetic attempts. One guilt-laced email, a letter from a third-rate lawyer that even Marina laughed at. Then, nothing. I had expected relief. What I didn't expect was peace. In Wilmington, I bought a modest beachside townhouse, 2 bedrooms, sunlight in every corner, every piece of furniture chosen by me. Every inch of wall space reflected my story, not theirs. No antiques, no shadows, just new beginnings. My work took a new direction, too. Inspired by what I had lived through, I began developing educational seminars for first-time homebuyers, especially women and young professionals. We covered everything. Legal protection, recognizing manipulative financial pressure, and the red flags that so often hide under the banner of family loyalty. I called the program Foundation First, Building Financial Boundaries That Last. At first, it was just a passion project, but then the emails started coming. A nurse whose parents forced her to co-sign a mortgage she couldn't afford. A graduate student pressured into temporarily transferring title of her condo to her father. A newlywed whose in-laws tried to gift themselves a room in her new house. Each story echoed mine in its own way, and each one made me more certain I was doing the right thing. We expanded quickly. Local realtors partnered with us. Financial counselors donated time. We even got featured in a regional magazine, the architect who builds safe spaces for people's futures, not just their homes. But the twist I didn't see coming? The letter. It arrived tucked inside one of Grandma's old recipe books I hadn't opened until months after moving. Faded ink. Her cursive, careful but strong. If they ever make you feel like your worth is negotiable, walk away, Olivia. Love that asks for sacrifice but offers none in return is not love. It's control. I hope you never forget the difference. I read it aloud beside her grave now, letting each word settle like soil on fresh roots. I didn't forget, Grandma, I said softly. I remembered, and I walked away. That night, I hosted a small dinner on my balcony. Just friends. People who chose me, not because of what I could give, but because of who I am. We raised glasses as the sun dipped below the sea. To chosen families, my friend Harper toasted. I smiled, lifting mine. To legacies you build for yourself. And somewhere deep inside, I knew. The burden I'd carried wasn't the house. It was believing I had to earn love. And I'd finally set it down.